Throughout its long history, Marvel has introduced countless characters. While heroes like Spider-Man and the Hulk are known to just about everyone, many others remain far less familiar. Even with the popularity of the MCU and games like Marvel Rivals, there are still characters who haven't appeared outside of the comics. In today's video, we'll be going through an iceberg that highlights some of Marvel's lesser-known characters. At the top, we'll cover those who may not be mainstream, but are still recognizable to casual fans. As we move down, we'll dive into some of the most obscure and forgotten characters to ever appear in a Marvel comic. We'll explore every corner of Marvel Universe, street-level heroes who showed up once and vanished, cosmic beings so overpowered that writers are afraid to use them again, and even characters Marvel themselves seem to have forgotten. If you enjoy Iceberg content, be sure to check out our other videos on the channel, including our DC and Invincible icebergs. Now, without further delay, let's start with Layer 1. Nova. Probably one of the most underrated and overlooked characters in all of Marvel is Nova, also known as Richard Rider. Richard is a member of the Nova Corps, something of a space police force, which is notorious among comic fans for being destroyed all the time. Each officer of the Nova Corps is granted unlimited energy generated by a living computer called the Xandarian World Mind. Richard Rider is the first human to take on the Nova mantle in Marvel. Originally a normal kid from New York, he's granted powers by a dying Nova Corps veteran, Roman Day, who was stated to be the last surviving member of the Corps. Nova's earlier adventures were mostly relegated to Earth, but he soon became a cosmic superhero. After the villain Nihilus destroyed the Nova Corps once again, Richard was the last remaining officer in the universe and led the resistance against Annihilus's army. You can watch the full breakdown of the Annihilation event on this channel. Interestingly, the Nova Corps has been part of the MCU for more than a decade, but Richard Rider still hasn't been introduced, despite the fact that Roman Day has made appearances in the movies. Yes, the man who arrested the Guardians in the very first Guardians of the Galaxy movie is the same man who grants Richard his powers in the comics. Gwenpool. Although Gwenpool is commonly believed to just be the female version of Deadpool, that's not exactly accurate. Yes, she was first introduced on a Deadpool variant cover, but other than fourth wall breaks, the two characters have very little in common. Gwenpool is not just a superhero, she's supposed to be a real person from our real world who somehow got transferred into a comic. She was a massive comic book fan in real life, so she knows everything about pretty much everyone, except for Deadpool of all people, as she said she found his comics too obnoxious and didn't read them. Gwenpool comics take fourth wall breaks to the next level. She not only talks to readers, but interacts with the comic itself, moving through panels and disrupting the text. This effectively gives her the power to manipulate her surroundings and even travel through time by moving between panels. The Maker. Although initially relatively obscure, the Maker has become one of the most popular villains in comics. In fact, he's currently one of the main villains in Marvel. He comes from the Ultimate Universe, which was supposed to be a reimagined and more modern version of traditional Marvel heroes, but instead what fans got were edgy and over-the-top stories filled with pointless violence. However, not every decision from the Ultimate comic run was received poorly. This universe's version of Reed Richards was taken in a very interesting direction, eventually transforming into a villain known as the Maker, who was even brought into the main reality after the Ultimate Universe was destroyed. His descent into villainy was partly caused by the disbandment of the Fantastic Four, the trauma following the Ultimatum event, which killed a large portion of Marvel superheroes, and rejection from Susan Storm, along with other factors like his troubled family background. His ultimate goal was to reshape the universe in his image, and he actually achieved it. The new Ultimate Universe is his doing, making him one of the few villains who technically won. Beyonder. The Beyonder needs no introduction, as he's one of the most popular cosmic beings in Marvel. During his introduction, he was stated to be the most powerful character in the Marvel cosmos and was the main instigator of the Secret Wars storyline, the biggest Marvel crossover at the time. In his first appearance, he was an unseen, omnipotent being, but later comics gave him a physical form. Modern stories revealed that there's more than one Beyonder, and the being Marvel heroes interacted with was actually just a curious young member of their race. The Beyonders eventually launched a full-on invasion on the Marvel multiverse and tried to destroy it as part of a grand experiment, which culminated in the 2015 Secret Wars. Beyonder was later shown among his race as an adult, but during the events of the Defenders, he left the multiverse altogether, saying that he would return on his own terms. Wonder Man. Simon Williams is an actor who's also a superhero known as Wonder Man. He was originally introduced as a villain who battled the Avengers while working for Baron Zemo. However, Simon ends up betraying Zemo and saves the heroes, sacrificing himself in the process. He was given his superpowers by Zemo after being exposed to radiation and ionic energy, which granted him enhanced strength and reflexes. In later comics, he gained additional abilities, such as flight and energy projection. Years after his death, Wonder Man was brought back and became a member of the Avengers. He later relocated to Los Angeles to pursue his acting career and became a founding member of the West Coast Avengers. Marvel has announced that a series based on Wonder Man is in development and is expected to be released in late 2025. Man-Thing. Man-Thing is a swamp monster who already made a live-action appearance in Marvel's Werewolf by Night short film. Although often compared to DC's more popular and very similar character Swamp Thing, Man-Thing actually debuted first, and interestingly, the creators of both characters were roommates. Man-Thing's real name is Ted Sallis, a scientist working in the Everglades, Florida, who was attempting to recreate Captain America's super soldier serum. When pursued by the technological terrorist group AIM, he injected himself with the formula in desperation, but crashed his car into the swamp. Due to the swamp's mystical energy combined with the serum's effects, Ted was transformed into Man-Thing, a powerful, empathic, but slow-moving monster. The Everglades is also home to the nexus of all realities, a gateway to every possible reality, and Man-Thing became its guardian, effectively serving as the protector of the multiverse's gates. Null. Null is the ancient god of darkness and the creator of all symbiotes. One of the most recognizable locations in the Marvel cosmos is Nowhere, the severed head of a Celestial. This Celestial was actually slain by Null eons ago using his newly crafted weapon, the All Black. The All Black is the very first symbiote ever created in Marvel, though it functions differently from the symbiotes we recognize today, like Venom or Carnage. The forging of this first symbiote in the form of a sword is the reason all symbiotes fear high-frequency sound and fire, as it reminds them of the Forge. Armed with this weapon and his growing symbiote army, Null terrorized the cosmos, waging eternal war against the light to restore the Abyss, which he claimed as his domain. Eventually, his connection to the symbiotes were severed by a young Thor, causing them to scatter and develop concepts like honor and nobility from their hosts. Over time, they rebelled against Null and imprisoned him for millennia. However, Carnage would eventually free Null in the modern era, leading to the iconic King in Black event. The Living Tribunal. One of the most powerful characters in all of Marvel is the cosmic entity known as the Living Tribunal, who is often stated to be the right hand of the One Above All, essentially the god of Marvel. The Living Tribunal is the personification of multiversal law, and to enforce these laws, he's granted tremendous power, ranking among the highest in Marvel's cosmic hierarchy, second only to the One Above All. One of the most defining characteristics of the entity is its three faces. One is open, the second is half covered, and the third is fully covered. These faces represent equity, vengeance, and necessity. After the multiverse was invaded by the Beyonders, they managed to kill the Tribunal, prompting the One Above All to replace him with a new Living Tribunal, who's actually Adam Warlock. Annihilus. One of the most underrated and enduring villains in Marvel is Annihilus, a warlord from the Negative Zone. The Negative Zone is a realm that exists parallel to the real universe, but is made out of antimatter instead. It is mostly devoid of life, but there are beings who reside there. Perhaps the most powerful of them is Annihilus. He wields a weapon called the Cosmic Control Rod, which not only extends his lifespan, but also grants him the ability to manipulate cosmic energy. With that weapon, he not only attempted to conquer the Negative Zone, but the positive matter universe as well. In the Annihilation event, it was revealed that the positive universe is expanding into the Negative Zone, which Annihilus perceived as a threat. Using his hive mind army, he launched an invasion of the universe, devastating some of the largest cosmic empires, with the ultimate goal of extinguishing all life so he could remain the sole living organism in existence. Super Skrull. Another classic Fantastic Four villain is the Super Skrull. Skrulls are an alien race of conquerors who possess unique shape-shifting abilities. They were actually the second enemy the Fantastic Four ever faced, appearing all the way back in Fantastic Four issue number 2. The Super Skrull appeared a bit later in issue number 18, where the Skrulls revealed their new secret weapon. They engineered one of their own to possess all the abilities of each member of the Fantastic Four simultaneously. The Super Skrull can stretch, turn invisible, unleash fire, and has the strength strength of the Thing. Although usually portrayed as an antagonist, the Super Skrull is not exactly a traditional villain. Later comics redefined him as a warrior who merely served his people, and he would even occasionally go against the Empire's wishes for the benefit of Skrulls. Shuma-Gorath. The supernatural side of Marvel Comics has drawn a lot of inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft, and this is perhaps most evident in Shuma-Gorath, one of the most enduring enemies in the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. Shuma-Gorath is a cosmic conqueror who has subjugated countless worlds. At one point, he even ruled Earth, but was banished back to his home dimension by the powerful sorcerer Sisneg. Even in exile, Shuma-Gorath continued to influence Earth, leading to the rise of several cults throughout history that worshipped him and prophesied his return. Fortunately, all attempts at his resurrection were thwarted by Doctor Strange and his allies. Later comics revealed that Shuma-Gorath is one of the many Angled Ones, a race of ancient eldritch beings so old they predate life on Earth, with some even predating the universe itself. Their true origin remains unknown. Some theories suggest they come from beyond reality, while others propose they were born from the chaos of creation. Eternity. Another recurring cosmic being in Marvel Comics is Eternity, who serves as the embodiment of the universe itself and the personification of time. Eternity ranks just below the living tribunal in the cosmic hierarchy, making it one of the most powerful beings in existence. It appears to have a personality, and is communicated with heroes, even assigning them missions from time to time. Interestingly, Eternity is said to have a lover, though more on her in a later entry. It's also been stated that the version of Eternity we usually see in the comics is just a small aspect of the true entity, which embodies the entire multiverse. The character made an appearance in the MCU as well, in Thor: Love and Thunder. Although its cosmic role wasn't fully explained, it can be presumed to be similar to the comics. In the film, it could grant any wish to whoever reached it, which played a central role in the story. Toxin. Ever wondered who the strongest symbiote in Marvel is? If we exclude Null, who arguably isn't even a true symbiote, the most powerful among them is said to be Toxin, the spawn of Carnage. It's been stated that in the symbiote lineage, the 1000th spawn possesses immense power compared to its predecessors, and Toxin is among those. Soon after its birth, it bonded with police officer Patrick Mulligan, who feared that Toxin would develop the same monstrous personality as its father, Carnage. However, Toxin grew close with its host, and Mulligan managed to instill ideas of honor and nobility, which influenced the symbiote. For a time, Toxin did revert to a more violent personality following Mulligan's death, but later found a new host in teenager Bren Waters. Currently, Toxin doesn't have a host, but that may change. Beta Ray Bill. One of the fan-favorite characters who still hasn't made an appearance in the movies is Beta Ray Bill, a close friend of Thor and one of Asgard's most reliable allies. Beta Ray Bill comes from the planet Corbin and was genetically enhanced to become its champion and protector. He was augmented with the DNA of a different species known as the Tuog, which is the reason for his horse-like appearance. His insecurity about his looks is a recurring theme in his story. After his planet was destroyed by Surtur, Beta Ray Bill led his people across the cosmos as their guardian. He's most famous for being the first non-Asgardian to lift Mjolnir, proving himself a worthy warrior. The weapon Stormbreaker, which in the movies was created for Thor to kill Thanos, actually belongs to Beta Ray Bill in the comics. He was so respected by the Asgardians that Odin himself commissioned a new weapon specifically for him. More recent comics have given him a new weapon, the Twilight Sword, which originally belonged to Surtur. Although Beta Ray Bill hasn't appeared in the MCU yet, he's been referenced several times. As mentioned, Stormbreaker is originally his weapon, and he also appeared as a statue in Thor Ragnarok. In fact, he was supposed to appear in that movie, but was ultimately cut from the final film. Darkhawk. Darkhawk is a very interesting superhero who often flies under the radar for more casual fans. His real name is Christopher Powell, and he was originally a teenager from Queens. His mother was a lawyer and his father was a police officer, and their family was constantly threatened by a local crime boss. One day, Chris and his brothers witnessed their father taking a bribe from the crime boss, perhaps out of desperation. When they were attacked, Chris accidentally stumbled upon an amulet the criminals were after. This amulet transposed him into the Darkhawk armor. Upon discovering this new power, he swore to use it as the edge against crime. In later comics, we learn that the armor is of alien origin and has a sentience of its own. It was originally used by an alien race known as the Shi'ar to expand their empire. Since the Darkhawk armor predates humanity, it wasn't accustomed to human physiology, which is why the armor's AI didn't take over Christopher's personality. With this armor, Chris gains superhuman strength and durability, as well as energy blast, self-repair, and enhanced vision. Initially, the armor could only glide, but it was later shown to be capable of full flight, even allowing him to traverse the cosmos. King Thanos. King Thanos is an elderly version of Thanos from an alternate future. In this timeline, Thanos grew stronger as he aged, while the Avengers grew weaker, culminating in a massive battle on Earth where Thanos killed everyone. He went on to annihilate all life in the universe, killing Galactus, slaying the Celestials, and turning the cosmic Ghost Rider into his lackey, all in service of Lady Death. In the end, only Thanos remained, along with his servant Cosmic Ghost Rider, Hulk, whom he had turned into a pet, and the Silver Surfer, the last remaining hero who opposed him. Knowing his victory was complete, King Thanos sent the Cosmic Ghost Rider back in time to bring his younger self into the future so he could kill him and finally be with Lady Death. However, young Thanos was disgusted by his future self's desperation and swore never to become like him, effectively erasing this timeline. Hyperion. Marvel has introduced many heroes similar to DC's Superman. Other than Sentry, who isn't on this iceberg, there's Hyperion. His origin is almost exactly like Superman's. He comes from an alternate universe as an Eternal from a dying world, sent to Earth as a baby as his planet's last survivor. Later in life, he became a superhero and joined the team Squadron Supreme, which is essentially Marvel's parody of the Justice League, with each member modeled after a DC superhero. Interestingly, in his first appearance, Hyperion and his team were villains who fought the Avengers. However, that Hyperion is different from the one we see in later comics. During the Incursion Crisis, an event in which two universes collide with Earth at the point of impact, Hyperion used his immense strength in an attempt to stop the collision. He was so incredibly powerful that, for a time, he held two Earths apart. But his efforts were ultimately in vain. The incursion was inevitable. Hyperion, however, managed to survive and was later discovered by scientists from the Prime Universe. He would eventually become a member of the Avengers and a close friend of Thor. Blue Marvel. Another character often referred to as Marvel's Superman is Adam Brashear, also known as the Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel's probably one of the most respected superheroes, as he truly is a jack of all trades. He's not only incredibly powerful, but also highly intelligent, often cited as one of the most brilliant scientists. He gained his powers sometime in the early 1960s while working on an antimatter experiment, which resulted in a massive explosion. While he became a hero, his friend, who also participated in the experiment, became unstable, both physically and mentally, and turned into the villain known as Anti-Man. Adam chose to use his powers for good and became a prominent superhero of the era. However, after his mask was torn off during a mission, the public discovered that Blue Marvel was African American. The society of that time wasn't willing to accept a black superhero, so Adam decided to step away from the spotlight, something he would later regret. He eventually re-emerged in the modern era when Anti-Man returned. This time he didn't wear a mask and quickly became a respected superhero and the leader of a team known as the Defenders. Maestro. Perhaps the most interesting alternate version of the Hulk is Maestro, an older, more intelligent version of Hulk from a dystopian reality. Maestro is a tyrant who rules over a small community of survivors in an alternate universe where most of humanity was wiped out in a nuclear war. It's been suggested that the abundance of radiation on this Earth may have actually enhanced the powers of gamma mutates like the Hulk. During the war, Bruce Banner was captured by AIM, who attempted to replicate Hulk's immunity to radiation. Their experiments failed, and Bruce was kept in stasis for nearly 100 years. When he finally awoke, he found the world in ruins. After wandering through the devastated remains of America, he eventually stumbled upon a community of survivors in what used to be New York. This group, however, was ruled by a mentally unstable Hercules. Wanting the power for himself, Hulk assassinated Hercules and took control of the settlement. He adopted the name Maestro and ruled with an iron fist, establishing himself as an unchallenged dictator. Impossible Man. In our DC Iceberg, we discussed Mr. Mixie, a ridiculously powerful fifth-dimensional imp who uses his powers mainly to annoy everyone. Marvel actually has a very similar character, Impossible Man, and some comics have even implied that he and Mr. Mixie might be the same being. Impossible Man is an alien with absurd shape-shifting abilities, capable of turning into practically anything, even altering his size and the density of his body. It's even been suggested that he can mimic the physical superpowers of certain heroes. He comes from the planet Pop-Up, a world so dangerous that all Pop-Upians evolved with extreme powers to survive. This species lacks individuality, as every Pop-Upian shares a collective consciousness, including memories and genetic traits. They don't even have names, since everyone knows who everyone else is. One Pop-Upian, who would later be dubbed Impossible Man by the Fantastic Four, came to Earth, not to conquer it, but simply because his people were bored and looking for entertainment. That's why Impossible Man is more of a nuisance than a threat. His only goal is to amuse himself by annoying everyone around him. Oblivion. One of the most powerful cosmic beings in Marvel is Oblivion. It predates the multiverse and serves as the personification of non-existence. Some villains, such as the Chaos King and possibly even Null, have been described as offshoots of Oblivion. However, Oblivion itself isn't technically a villain. It functions more like a force of nature. It knows that in the end it will inevitably prevail, as all existence will eventually cease, leaving only Oblivion. It's often described as one of the most powerful entities in Marvel. Oblivion's considered the dark counterpart to the Living Tribunal, who, as we've already discussed, is second only to the One Above All in Marvel's cosmic hierarchy. This effectively places Oblivion on the same level of power and cosmic importance as the Living Tribunal. Mr. Immortal. Mr. Immortal is perhaps one of the most unique mutants in Marvel, who might not actually be a mutant at all. Even though he presents himself as one and describes himself that way, he's classified as Homo Supreme, a stage beyond Homo sapiens and Homo Superior, the latter being the scientific term for mutants in the Marvel Universe. Mr. Immortal's power, as you probably guessed, is immortality. He's quite literally unable to die no matter what happens to him. To be more precise, he appears to die, but always comes back to life from any imaginable injury. It's been stated that Mr. Immortal is destined to survive for billions of years, witness the end of the universe through entropy, and eventually be reborn in the next cycle as that universe's Galactus. That's a pretty heavy fate for a character often treated as a joke. Forget-Me-Not. Another very unique mutant is Forget-Me-Not, whose ability is to be forgotten. When he's not in the view of an individual, his presence, existence, and any memories of him completely disappear from their mind. This obviously made his life quite difficult as he struggles to socialize and build any meaningful relationships. He's been a member of the X-Men for years, but was absent from all records and went completely unnoticed by his teammates. His powers even extend to computers and cameras, where any proof of his existence gets erased. His abilities also allow him to be completely undetected by telepaths, which prompted Professor X to place a psychic in his own mind that would remind him of Forget-Me-Not's existence every hour. Armor. Armor is a young mutant and a relatively new member of the X-Men. Originally from Tokyo, Japan, she moved to America to become one of the students at the Xavier Institute. She has a very unique ability to generate an impenetrable psionic armor around herself. This armor is so durable that it allowed her to survive a fall from the atmosphere completely unharmed. The exoskeleton also enhances her strength, making her nearly on par with X-Men heavy hitters such as Colossus. However, she does possess some key weaknesses. For one, her armor is not permanent, and prolonged use takes a toll on her, which might even render her unconscious. Also, certain materials, such as Wolverine's adamantium claws, are capable of piercing the armor. Wraith. There have been several characters who have taken the name Wraith, but this entry refers specifically to Zach Dell, a Kree superhero and a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Wraith has a tragic origin. He was originally the son of a brilliant scientist who created a power source he claimed was capable of lighting the entire galaxy. However, the Kree Empire banished the scientist, though he continued his work. Using his invention, he apparently turned a small planet into a paradise, but the Kree still executed him for disobedience. Wraith survived and escaped into the cosmos, eventually being adopted by a mysterious race known as the Nameless. In addition to being a skilled marksman and combatant, Wraith possesses abilities not found in other Kree, such as summoning fear-inducing swarms. After reaching adulthood, Wraith set out to take revenge against the Empire that murdered his parents, only to discover that the old ruling class of the Kree had been destroyed, and the Empire was now under the control of Ultron, of all people. He eventually joined the Resistance and played a key role in defeating Ultron. Moon Girl. Moon Girl is often stated to be one of the most intelligent people in the Marvel Universe, possessing intellect on par with the likes of Reed Richards and Bruce Banner, despite being a 10-year-old girl. She apparently completed a special test created by Bruce Banner, which proved her to be one of the smartest individuals to ever live, as Bruce himself couldn't complete it. The Kree Empire has even acknowledged her intelligence as a potential threat. She's usually paired with Devil Dinosaur, a character who's been around much longer in Marvel and has even canonically fought Godzilla. Originally, Devil Dinosaur came from an alternate universe that was still in the Jurassic period, but he was brought into the main reality by Moon Girl's teacher completely by accident. The two eventually formed a bond and became a fan-favorite duo, even receiving an animated TV show inspired by the comics. Madcap. Madcap can be best described as a villain driven insane by immortality. He's characterized by his chaotic and unpredictable nature. He possesses very potent regeneration, similar to Deadpool's, rendering him effectively unkillable. He can also induce craziness in people, forcing them to act in chaotic and insane manners. This power apparently has the opposite effect on Deadpool, turning him into a more calm and collected version of himself. Madcap has a tragic origin. Originally a devoted family man, he was in a bus accident with a truck that was carrying chemicals. Obviously, chemicals in Marvel Comics are never normal, so when he came into contact with them, he gained the aforementioned powers. Everyone else on the bus, however, including his family, died. Deciding that his life was now meaningless, he repeatedly tried to take his own life but was unable to due to his regenerative abilities. Following this, he embraced nihilism and became a chaotic villain. Magus. Magus is a very interesting concept that is not well known among more casual fans. He's essentially the arch-enemy of Adam Warlock. However, what makes him unique is that Magus is Adam Warlock, either from the future or, in some cases, a manifestation of his darker aspects. The original Magus was a tyrannical ruler of an empire and a religious cult known as the Universal Church of Truth. He attempted to guide his younger self through a series of actions that would lead him to become Magus. Adam Warlock, however, defied his fate with the help of an unexpected ally, Thanos himself. We see another iteration of Magus after Adam acquires the Infinity Gauntlet and expels the evil from his soul, unknowingly giving Magus a corporeal form. He possesses the same powers as Adam Warlock, which, if you're familiar with the character, means a lot of powers. He's been described as Warlock's universal counterbalance. While Adam is a hero through and through, Magus is his polar opposite, his dark half. Kang the Conqueror has even described Magus as one of the most terrifying entities in the cosmos. Infinite. Infinite is a very interesting but also underused character. He's a being presumably from a different dimension, where all inhabitants dwarf humans in size, referred to as the Macroverse. He attempted to visit Earth multiple times, but all of his efforts were stopped by the superhero Blue Marvel. We witnessed Infinite's second visit, which occurred near Machu Picchu in Peru. Blue Marvel referred to him as one of the greatest cosmic mysteries he had ever encountered. Apparently, Infinite is so massive that his arrival on Earth would destroy the entire planet. Mistaken for an invader or conqueror, Blue Marvel consistently blocked his entries. Due to his immense size, Infinite would create ripples in space 10 hours before his arrival, which gave Blue Marvel time to prepare. With help from the inhuman Ulysses Kane, who has the ability to glimpse the future, Blue Marvel learned of Infinite's arrival a week in advance. This time, he prepared differently. On Infinite's 9th attempt to reach Earth, instead of sending him back, Blue Marvel managed to reduce his size to that of a human, allowing him to visit Earth safely. It turned out that Infinite was neither a villain nor a conqueror, he was simply an explorer who wanted to visit Earth. Upon his arrival, he even expressed happiness at finally meeting Blue Marvel and the other heroes. Kwaku Anansi. Although originally Spider-Man was just a regular guy who was bitten by a radioactive spider, later comics have amended some aspects of his origin. It turns out that there are many people with spider-like powers across the multiverse, referred to as spider totems, and they were all granted abilities by some supernatural forces. Now, many fans don't like this addition, as one of the core aspects of Peter Parker's character is that he's a normal kid who got his powers completely by accident and decided to use them for good. Adding supernatural forces that supposedly chose him kinda takes away the appeal of the character for many fans. Nevertheless, this updated origin is canon, and the very first, and perhaps the most powerful spider totem, is Kwaku Anansi, Kwaku Anansi is a trickster god from West Africa. In fact, the character is based on an actual god from African mythology known as Anansi, usually portrayed as a spider and known for being a trickster. Marvel's Anansi was stated to be the first ever spider person in history and used his powers to traverse the entirety of Africa, helping people across the continent. After he saw all there was to see, he struck a bargain with a different god to achieve enlightenment and vanished from the mortal plane. His powers were subsequently transferred to countless spiders across the world. In addition to the powers typically associated with Spider-Man, Anansi can teleport, alter his size, and even negate the powers of any spider people, as, after all, he is the source of all their power. The Runner. You probably already know that the fastest character in DC is Wally West, the third Flash, but Marvel's fastest character is not as well known. Probably the most famous contender for this title is a being known as the Runner. The Runner is one of the Elders of the Universe, a group of ancient beings who develop special abilities due to exposure to the energy left behind by the Big Bang. Each Elder outlived their species as well as their galaxies, and used that energy to develop different powers. The Runner, whose real name is Gilpet Perdon, spent billions of years channeling cosmic energy into his speed. He was often stated to be the fastest being there is, but only uses a fraction of his speed while on planets that can support life. His exact top speed is unknown, but at one point, his speed was described as being equal to instant teleportation. Cyttorak. Juggernaut, although commonly associated with the X-Men, is not a mutant, and never was. Instead, he gets his power from a being known as Cyttorak. Cyttorak is an entity from a different dimension known as the Crimson Cosmos. He's a force of pure destruction. Apparently, when he was only 4 years old, he was already rampaging across 7 different hells. He was worshipped on Earth both as a god and a demon, but was eventually sealed off in his own dimension. To maximize his destructive potential, he created the Crimson Gem, which would transform anyone into a human Juggernaut. This is why Juggernaut is so ridiculously powerful. He's quite literally empowered by the god of destruction. There have been many Juggernauts throughout history, but the most famous is Cain Marko, the stepbrother of Charles Xavier, who is both a frequent adversary and an occasional ally of the X-Men. Manifold. Probably one of the most unique mutants in Marvel is Manifold. His real name is Eden Fessy, and he's an Aboriginal Australian who was tutored by other Australian superhero, Gateway, a mysterious figure whose true name is still unknown. Eden's primary ability is teleportation, allowing him to travel to any point in the universe with little to no limits. However, to be more precise, his true power is the ability to communicate with the universe itself, which then adjusts its structure to fulfill his request. This means he isn't technically teleporting. Instead, the universe folds in such a way that allows him to move from one point to another. As long as he knows his destination, he can travel there, and bring others with him. He was first recruited by Nick Fury into the Secret Warriors, though his time there was brief. He later became a more permanent hero after being invited to join the Avengers, where he proved to be a valuable asset as his teleportation abilities allowed the team to traverse the universe instantly. The Chaos King. As you've probably noticed from some of the earlier entries, multiple gods from various pantheons coexist in Marvel, and the Japanese gods are no exception. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikaboshi, is the ancient Japanese god of evil and chaos. He is an offshoot of Oblivion, a character we've already discussed, which means he possesses immense power. Even Eternity was terrified of Mikaboshi's might. In the event known as the Chaos War, Mikaboshi ravaged the universe and wiped out various pantheons, including the Greek pantheon, with the exception of Hercules. Apparently, during his rampage, he destroyed 99% of the multiverse, which arguably makes him the deadliest villain in Marvel. Of course, as is often the case in comics, his damage was later undone. Scorn. Probably one of the most unique symbiotes in Marvel is Scorn. Originally created by a scientist attempting to fuse the Carnage symbiote with technology, Scorn eventually gained a consciousness of its own, separate from Carnage. Due to the aforementioned experiments, Scorn is the only mechanical symbiote. In addition to the typical abilities seen in the likes of Venom and Carnage, Scorn can interface with and fuse into different pieces of machinery, allowing its host to create various weapons. It's essentially Marvel's version of Upgrade from Ben 10. Its host was Tanis Nieves, a psychiatrist who once treated Cletus Cassidy and even briefly wore the Carnage symbiote herself. Scorn first began manifesting on Tanis' arm, and although it was briefly stolen by Cletus' girlfriend Shriek, it ultimately returned to Tanis, who accepted it, thus giving birth to Scorn. the Marquis of Death. The Marquis of Death is another very overpowered character who only appeared in one story and was promptly forgotten afterward. His real name is Clyde Wincham, and he's a reality-warping mutant, perhaps one of the most powerful mutants in the entire multiverse. Clyde actually first appeared in the series Marvel 1985, where he was the sole mutant of his universe and sought to bring superheroes into the real world. But that version of Clyde is different from the character in this entry. The Marquis of Death is an alternate version of Clyde who became far more malevolent and went on to slaughter entire universes, including cosmic beings like Eternity. At one point, he even took Dr. Doom as his apprentice, teaching him the ways of villainy and promising to return to his universe in 20 years. During that time, he took another apprentice. Upon returning, he visited Latveria and scolded Dr. Doom, first for never truly defeating his archenemies, the Fantastic Four, and second for still caring about his people and ensuring a good quality of life in Latveria, which Clyde considered a weakness. He then set Doom ablaze and sent him millions of years into the past, where he was supposedly killed by prehistoric animals. The Marquis of Death then confronted the Fantastic Four. With the help of the original Clyde, the Marquis was weakened enough for the Fantastic Four to immobilize him. The final blow was delivered by his second apprentice, who turned out to be Dr. Doom himself. Apparently, when sent back in time, Doom survived for millions of years, mastering the dark arts and plotting his revenge, even transforming his body so thoroughly that not a single molecule remained that could betray his identity. When the time came, Doom ended the life of his former master. Doorman. Doorman is a mutant and a member of the Great Lakes Avengers, a team made up mostly of comedic characters like the aforementioned Mr. Immortal. As you've probably guessed from his name, his ability is to create doors. More precisely, he can transform his body into a portal that allows others to pass through solid objects. He's been described as a Class 10 teleporter, and his powers are connected to the so-called Dark Force dimension. His body essentially serves as a portal to that dimension, enabling people or objects to travel through it. After Doorman's death, he was resurrected and recruited by Oblivion, who, as we've previously discussed, is one of the most powerful beings in existence. Doorman then became an Angel of Death, receiving a massive power boost. Slapstick. In the power scaling community, there's a term called Toon Force. It's used to describe the various abilities of cartoon characters. For example, when Bugs Bunny grabs a hammer out of thin air, he's using Toon Force. Obviously, the creators of these cartoons never intended for their characters to have reality-warping powers, but that doesn't stop fans from making such theories. Marvel, however, introduced a character whose whole gimmick is that he functions with cartoon physics in a more or less grounded world. This character is Slapstick. Originally a mischievous kid named Stephen Harmon, he gained powers after stumbling upon a portal that stretched his body across 3,741 dimensions. Following this incident, his entire body was made out of so-called unstable molecules, essentially turning him into a living cartoon character. He can manipulate his body to take any shape imaginable, and is practically invulnerable. In classic cartoon tradition, he's unharmed by even the most devastating blows. The Avenger Prime. Avenger Prime is a variant of Loki who became the commander of the multiversal Avengers. In his universe, Thor died during childhood, which led Odin to abdicate the throne, leaving Loki as Asgard's ruler. Feeling lonely, he sought companionship and found other Lokis from different universes, only to discover that all of them were despicable villains who always lost to the Avengers. He also learned that in every universe, Loki's actions were the catalyst for the formation of the Avengers. Believing it was his destiny to eventually lose to them, this Loki decided to prevent the Avengers from ever assembling. He ensured that Tony Stark remained imprisoned, kept Captain America frozen in ice, and hid Thor's hammer. While successful, he made a crucial mistake. Without the Avengers, there was no one to protect the universe from cosmic threats. In the end, Loki became the only true superhero, defeating all the villains himself. But the battles wiped out all life in the universe. Loki then attempted to end his own life, but instead ended up in the God Quarry. There, he prayed, and the quarry transformed him into Avenger Prime, perhaps as a way for him to atone for his mistakes. He now assembles Avengers from across the multiverse to face cosmic threats. The Stranger. One of the most mysterious characters in all of Marvel is a cosmic being known as the Stranger. Although he has a humanoid appearance, he is not human. He's something of a cosmic scientist who travels the universe collecting various oddities and conducting experiments on them in his laboratory. However, his experiments weren't always ethical, which is why he's sometimes portrayed as a villain. One of the most defining traits of the Stranger is that no one truly knows his identity. He's said to be an enigma even to himself. The most popular and widely accepted theory is that he originated from the planet Gigantus, a world inhabited by peace-loving Eternals. After a war with a rival Eternal faction devastated their world, the survivors supposedly merged their minds into a single being, who would later become the Stranger. This means he possesses the collective consciousness of billions. The Gigantians were driven by a relentless pursuit of knowledge, and that same curiosity continues to drive the Stranger in his cosmic endeavors. Black Panther Mosi. For the longest time, Bashinga was stated to be the first king of Wakanda, as well as the first Black Panther in history. However, more recent comics have introduced a different character, Mosi, who lived 1 million years before the Common Era. While Mosi was never a king, he was the first person in history to take the heart-shaped herb and be approved by the panther goddess Bast. The meteor that brought vibranium to Wakanda 1 million years ago also brought alien creatures, which Mosi fought in order to protect his people. He was later noticed by Odin, who recruited him into the prehistoric Avengers. Mosi was also worthy of lifting Mjolnir, perhaps making him the first person other than Odin to do so. Unfortunately, Mosi died during one of the team's missions, which led to the Avengers disbanding and the tribes that would eventually form Wakanda distancing themselves from the outside world. Protégé. Protégé is a character that often tops list of the most powerful beings in Marvel. He's an artificial being created by the Universal Church of Truth. After they were unable to find God, they decided to create one themselves, thus birthing the Protégé, a childlike, messianic figure who became their supreme being. Protégé possesses an extremely overpowered ability, absolute power mimicry, meaning he can copy any ability that exists. His powers are so immense that he even attempted to usurp the Living Tribunal, and Eternity stated that if not stopped, Protégé would eventually achieve infinite omnipotence. The Queen of Nevers. Remember Eternity's lover from one of the earlier entries? That would be the Queen of Nevers. Apparently, even cosmic entities can fall in love. She is the embodiment of possibility, and it's been said that when she's with Eternity, anything can happen. She was originally known as the Pilgrim, and embodied the previous cycles of the multiverse. After her cycle ended, she was reborn as the Queen of Nevers. She resides outside the multiverse in a place called the Land of Couldn't Be, Shouldn't Be, an empty abyss where nothing ever happens. As the embodiment of possibility, she can see all potential futures. However, if no future exists, she will fade and die, which is exactly what happened during the destruction of the multiverse in Secret Wars. Moradin. Like mentioned in many of our previous entries, the multiverse in Marvel is cyclical, meaning that before the current multiverse, there were many others. Originally, Marvel Comics took place in the 7th iteration of the multiverse, known as the 7th Cosmos, but after Secret Wars, reality was reborn into the 8th Cosmos. We see glimpses of previous incarnations in the Defenders comics. The 6th Cosmos, which was also the origin point of Galactus, was when science as a concept was established, and was populated with creatures dedicated to the pursuit of scientific advancement. In contrast, the 5th Cosmos was the origin point of all magic and housed the earliest magicians in creation. One of them was Moradin, the sorcerer supreme of his era and the earliest known sorcerer in Marvel. He was encountered by the Defenders, who were hurled across the past. Moradin apparently survived the entropy of his cycle and was reborn into the next multiverse as a planet devourer similar to Galactus, known as Omnimax. Anti-All and the Life-Bringer One. We've already explained the 6th and 5th Cosmoses, so let's go even further back. The 4th Cosmos was populated by archetypes of future Marvel characters, and the 3rd Cosmos was a primitive realm where we see the very first battle between a hero and a villain. These two cosmic entities are known as the Anti-All and the Life-Bringer One. The Anti-All is believed to originate from the void that existed before creation, while the Life-Bringer One embodies light and order. Their battle shaped all of reality. The Life-Bringer was apparently revered far into the future, across multiple cosmic cycles. Following their clash and the defeat of the Anti-All, its aspects were scattered throughout reality. Doctor Strange later theorized that these fragments eventually gave rise to dark cosmic beings encountered by future heroes. The First Firmament. Now let's discuss the very first cosmos. In the beginning, there was no multiverse. There was only one universe, and its embodiment was known as the first firmament. For a time, it was all that existed. But out of loneliness, it created life. It created the Celestials, who for a time served it without question. However, a divide emerged among them. One faction, known as the Aspirants, wanted to continue serving the first firmament, while another group, known as the Multicolored Rebels, sought to expand life and creation. Their disagreement led to a civil war, known as the Celestial War. The rebels emerged victorious, and the conflict resulted in the shattering of the first firmament. Its fragments were scattered across creation, giving rise to the second cosmos and the first true multiverse. The first firmament, however, survived and retreated to the far reaches of reality. From there, it watched the multiverse, and when the time was right, it launched an attack on eternity. Toltec. Let's take a break from cosmic entities and discuss someone more street level. The best way to describe Toltec is as the Mexican equivalent of Moon Knight, with the methods and brutality of the Punisher. His identity is unknown, and it's even unclear whether he possesses any superpowers. Captain America has theorized that Toltec might be an Aztec god, or at least empowered by one, similar to how Moon Knight is empowered by Khonshu. He operates in central Mexico and targets cartels, taking them out with ferocious efficiency. Even the Punisher was impressed by his ruthlessness. Toltec spares no one even remotely associated with the cartel, not even their dogs, leaving no survivors. Despite being a pretty cool character, Toltec remains underused, having appeared only once in a Moon Knight story. The Blazing Skull. Imagine a character so obscure that even Marvel seems to have forgotten about him. According to Wikipedia, the writer and artist who created Blazing Skull are unknown. He first appeared all the way back in 1941, portrayed as a World War II soldier who discovered a group of mysterious men with flaming skulls for heads. They informed him that he had been chosen by the forces of destiny to become a champion of freedom, and began his training, which granted him powers such as invulnerability to fire. Upon returning, he adopted the name Blazing Skull and continued fighting in the war. Interestingly, he's not technically a skeleton. He can apparently make his head invisible, giving the illusion of a flaming skull. Some of you might notice similarities to Ghost Rider, but these two characters are completely unrelated. Blazing Skull was forgotten after the 1940s, but was brought back in the 90s. His absence was explained by revealing that he had been kidnapped by terrorists for decades, but due to his healing factor, he didn't age during that time. The Buried Alien. Let's conclude this iceberg with a very interesting entry. The Buried Alien. But before we talk about the character, we need to establish some context. In their iconic storyline, Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC Comics killed off several major characters. One of them was Barry Allen, the main Flash at the time. And unlike many comic deaths, he actually stayed dead for nearly 20 years. A few years after Crisis on Infinite Earths, Marvel introduced a mysterious character who bore a striking resemblance to the Flash. In Quasar issue number 17, the Runner organizes a galactic race, inviting various speedsters from across the universe. During the tournament, a mysterious blonde man appears, wearing a tattered red costume and golden boots. He doesn't remember anything about himself, only that he was running. He enters the race and wins with ease. When asked his name, he introduces himself as the Buried Alien, a not-so-subtle reference to Barry Allen. The Runner even calls him the fastest man alive. We later see him participate in another race under a new name, Fast Forward. This time, he loses, but only because he sacrifices his lead to save fellow speedster Makari from an attack. The two become friends, and Makari promises to help him find his way home. We haven't seen the Buried Alien again, but you can keep it as your personal headcanon that he eventually returned to DC, just as Barry Allen would later make his official comeback in the DC Universe. And that's it. We've explored every corner of the Marvel Universe to uncover the most obscure and forgotten characters. Ones even the most dedicated fans might struggle to name. But even this massive iceberg only scratches the surface. Marvel has introduced countless characters over the decades, and not all of them have made it into the mainstream spotlight. If you know of an obscure or underrated Marvel character that we missed, let us know in the comments below. Maybe they'll be featured in part 2. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden corners of comics. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.